Hey guys, it's Katie, and I'm here today to do another book haul. If you guys know, and you've been on my channel for a while, you know I don't really do a ton of book hauls for a million reasons. But decided that until we move to our new house, I'm gonna do these videos as kind of like a documentation, so I just kind of know what I've got and whatnot until I'm able to go through all of my boxes and really go through my list and everything. I don't necessarily know what I'm going to keep and what I'm going to give away, so I don't want to create a shelf on Goodreads yet. But once I am able to fully go through everything, then I'm going to start creating lists on Goodreads about all of this stuff so I can keep track better that way. But for now, I'm just going to document it here. But anyway, since I last updated you in January, I think it was, I've accumulated actually quite a few things. Periodically, I go through my want to read shelf on Goodreads and I find the most reasonably priced books that I can get for ebooks, and then I kind of just go on a thing because I usually accumulate gift cards and things. So I ended up getting a ton of stuff, and then I also got a few books at a few charity shops that are close by. So I'm just here to tell you about what I got recently. There are a few things that I've read already, and I'll probably just mention that briefly as I go. But for now, let's just jump right on in. The first book that I got is one that I'm actually surprised that I didn't have before, and that is Milk by Emma Rosen. I've had this on my shelf for quite a while, but I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. And I thought I already had it hauled, but apparently I didn't. So I went ahead and I got that, and I will probably be reading that sometime early in 2020 because this year is just a little bit more chaotic with reading, so I had to really plan things out, and it just didn't work out. And the next book that I got is one that I'm a little bit hesitant to read, but I went ahead and got it anyway, and I'll tell you why in a second, and that is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro. For those of you who don't know, Rocky from Bond of the Book adores this series with every fiber of her being. And I talked to her about some of my fears on one of her videos one time, and she kind of convinced me to give it a try. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, and a lot of my reservations kind of center around a lot of things, but really the fact that it's a gender-bent Holmes, because every other retelling up to this point has been male, except for Elementary. But the core Sherlock Holmes has always been Holmes and Watson, Sherlock and John. And the fact that it's different here has me a little bit nervous, but at the same time, it has a lot of things that I actually want to happen in canon, despite it being so heavily referenced in like subtext of the actual works. But I do believe that there's a romance between Jamie and Charlotte in the series in some form or another. So I'm really excited to see that portrayed in an adaptation of Sherlock Holmes. And I've heard great things. Plus, I love boarding school stuff. Like when I read Sherlock fanfics, like I love me a good teen lock AU where they're in college or high school. It's just the best time. And so I have a feeling that I'm going to like it more than I think I do, but I'm still reserving judgment. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this book. The book I got is Call of Kithshire by C. Screen. It's just one of those books that's been on my TBR for a while. It sounds interesting. I'm pretty sure it has to do with it's like a dark fae story, kind of, I think. I don't actually know that for a fact. And I don't think I know really anyone who's read it, but it's been on my TBR for a while and it sounds really intriguing. So I figured, why not give it a shot? It is Beyond a Darkened Shore. And this is another one that I know sort of a little bit about. It seems to be stemmed in Celtic mythology in some way, shape, or form. And that's something I'm always game for because I feel like we don't get as much of that as I would like to get in a fantasy. I mean, we have a lot of Arthurian legend stuff, and that's sort of Celtic based, but like not, if you know what I mean. So I'm hoping that this book is as good as I've been hearing about, and I'm excited to pick that one up as well. And the next one is Empire of Sand, and this is a book I've been hearing quite a bit about. It's a diverse fantasy, and from what I've heard, it's a good diverse fantasy, and I'm all about that. I am ready to dive into some desert fantasy series, books, whatever, and it just sounds so good and so different and so unique and like nothing I've ever read. And so I'm ready to dive into that, and I hope I really enjoy it. And next is a book I've already read and I absolutely loved, and that is The Tears of the Salamander by Peter Dickinson. Basically, if you don't know what this book is about, it follows our young protagonist Alfredo, who is a chorister. And after his parents and brother die in a fire, his mysterious uncle swoops into his life and takes him away to this island where he learns really what his family is all about. Learns a lot about his past, and there's just a lot of interesting magic involved that deals with music, as well as alchemy and things of that sort. It's a very, very well done middle grade book, and I literally cannot recommend it enough. It's one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, and I just want more people to read this book because it doesn't seem to have that great of reviews on Goodreads, and I need to talk to more people about this book because it's so good. It's so well done. And if you're one of those people who is kind of like me and you like to have like a soundtrack along with some of your books, this one kind of has a built-in soundtrack because it's all these like church choir music that is interwoven into this. It's just so well done, and I'm going to recommend it for the rest of my life. Just go read it. It's so good. And next is Where Loyalties Lie, and this is a dark pirate fantasy novel, I believe. And really, that's all I needed to know before I dove in and was all over this book. If you don't know already, some of my big buzzwords are just like sea, ships, ocean, pirates, just any kind of ship book. Whether it's pirates or not, I am going to be all over that. And that's what this book is. So that's really all I needed to know before I got it. And the next one is another book that I already read, and that is Bilbo's Last Song by J.R.R. Tolkien. Basically, it is a song/poem that Bilbo wrote right before him and Frodo left for the Undying Lands at the end of The Return of the King. And that's just kind of the gist of it. It has all of these lovely illustrations and things, but I am going to put a disclaimer on it. Don't get the Kindle edition, because if you don't know, Kindle editions are in black and white, and these illustrations are in color, and they reference it because they have like a whole section in the book where they talk about the illustrations, and they're like, if you see the figure dressed in red and blue or whatever, I'm like, I don't see that. So don't get it in ebook edition if you can, because you'll just get a better experience reading it in the physical book. So I'm probably going to pick up a physical book at some point, but I do recommend it because it's a really lovely addition to Tolkien's overall series. The next book is Stonehill Downs by Sarah Remy. I kind of know Sarah from like fandom life and stuff, and these are just her fantasy novels that she's written. She's written quite a few books, but I figured I'd start with this series. I don't know too much about it, but the premise sounded kind of interesting. If I remember correctly, this deals a lot with like bone magic and things like that, and that just sounds really interesting and intriguing to me. So I figured, why not give it a try and support a friend in the process. Next one is Princesses Behaving Badly, Real Stories from History Without the Fairy Tale Endings. And this is a book that was kind of one that I heard about on Cara from Wild Book Garden's channel. It sounded super interesting when she was describing it because, if you don't know, I am historical garbage and I love fairy tale, folklore, mythology things, because this is talking about kind of the people that inspired them or the historical figures that were behind the fairy tales, folklore, mythology, whatever. I really want to know that because that's fascinating to me. So I'm definitely looking forward to picking that one up at some point. The book I got is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and this is a book I've been hearing pretty much since I joined BookTube a couple of years ago. I've heard a couple of people talk about it, and it sounds really interesting. It sounds kind of like a historical fiction fantasy fusion kind of a thing. I think it takes place in like Victorian England or 16th century England or something like that, and it's like dealing with science and historical events and just all these kinds of really interesting things, and it just sounded really, really intriguing to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I think about it when I pick it up. Then the next book is another one that I thought I had already, and that is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. This is a book I've been wanting to pick up for quite a long time at this point. I've already seen the miniseries that BBC put out, also called North and South, and I mean, it has Richard Armitage in it, so of course I was going to watch it, but also it has an incredible soundtrack. So those two things alone were enough to just drag me in, but then also just watching it, it's just really good. It's very, very similar to Pride and Prejudice, but it takes place during the Industrial Revolution in England. And basically what it is she's from the South and he's from the North, and she goes to work at his factory, I think it is, and it's just kind of all of their interactions. She's not afraid to stand up to him, and he lives this like uppity life, and it's just a lot of crazy stuff. But it's a really great book to show you what society was like during that time period while also having a dash of romance thrown in. And the next book that I got is Just One Damned Thing After Another, and it's the first book in this specific series. I think it's about these characters that they don't time travel per se, but they are able to witness historical events so that they can document them and something along those lines. And I need more time travel-y like books in fantasy. There aren't very many of them, and it makes me really sad. I think I only know of one other at least that I'm hoping to read at some point, but I somehow have to get my hands on because I am having trouble getting my hands on it. My library doesn't seem to have it. I can't get it on ebook, and I just can't find it anywhere. Anyway, this book, because it had those elements in it, just dying to get my hands on, I just had to go for it, and I've already put it on my TBR for this year. I just switched some things around because that book sounds so good, so I just had to put it on my TBR so I could read it as quickly as possible. Another book that I got is called The Sea Ain't Mine Alone by C.L. Beaumont. A few of you may have heard me talk about this at some point or another. I definitely did a review of it a while back, but this is one of my most anticipated books of the year. I also know the author from Phantom Life Things, and this is also a genre that I don't typically dabble in, and that is historical romance, but with a heavy dash of romance in it. I just don't tend to read a lot of books like that, but once again, because it's a friend, I'm really want to support them, but also just the premise is so fun and interesting, and once I read the book, I just immediately fell in love with everything. But basically what this is, as I said, is it's a historical romance novel that takes place in the 1970s, right around the time that the Vietnam War is going on / ending, I think. And one of our characters is actually fought in the war, and he's kind of been discharged because he had an injury or something. But anyway, that's not the main focus of the story. The main focus is that this is a kind of a sports romance. It follows the surfing scene. So our two main characters, James and Danny, lead very different lives, but they both have a love of surfing. James is the war veteran that I was kind of referencing before, and he really just uses surfing as kind of a cathartic thing to help keep him centered because of all of the horrors that he witnessed during the war. Danny is the Billabong master. He is the champion to beat. And basically what happens is this is amidst the competition season, so James is vying to participate in the Billabong Masters, and Danny is, as I said, the reigning champ. And these two meet, butt heads, and then it's just kind of watching them and their relationship grow over the period of the book. It's so well done. I love the characters. They're so well written. The world that CL created just draws you in. Like, you feel like you are there. Like, it's like a pensieve almost. You just fall into the world and you can't help but want to be there, kind of a situation. If you can't tell, this is one of the books that I read. But it's so phenomenally written, and I definitely recommend picking it up if you guys like books kind of like that. I do want to let you know that it does have quite a few sex scenes in it though, so if that's something that bothers you, maybe skip it. But it has so much more to it than that as well, because it's about how these two men are able to have their relationship in the society that they're living in, because the 1970s, as you may or may not know, was not necessarily the most welcoming time period for homosexuals. So it's something to maybe consider checking out. And I also recently hauled The Phantom of the Opera. I've wanted to read this for a long time, but I could never remember to pick it up. And I was finally jogged, and I finally got myself a copy of it, and I am so excited to finally jump into that. Now, I also want to talk about the few books that I hauled from charity shop. I don't have them here with me because I just don't. But anyway, the first one that I got is called The Mask of Atreus, and basically it's a historical thriller novel. It's kind of similar to things like the Da Vinci Code and like Dan Brown's novels, where it's like it's got this historical person or historical event or whatever, and there's someone gets murdered in a museum, and they have to do a lot of like clue finding things surrounding that. I am garbage for novels like that. Whether they're well written or not, I just love them. They are my candy in a lot of ways. You guys know I'm primarily a fantasy channel, but there are some things that I just love, and novels like that are definitely one of them. I just eat them up, despite how good or bad they are. I really enjoy them. The book that I hauled from the charity shop adventure that I went on is Dragon Keeper by Cara Wilkinson. This is an Eastern-inspired dragon fantasy book. I think it's also a series, and that's about all I know about it. I know it's inspired by Eastern dragon lore, and that's super interesting to me because we don't get a ton of fantasy that deals with that, and I know that dragons are seen in a very, very different light over there than they are in the Western society. And I think it has to do kind of with a, like, the last dragon is going to be hunted down, and there's a young boy who's called to his destiny, and he has to save the dragon's life or something along those lines, you know, the typical trope. But I'm really interested to see how it is done with Eastern influence, because I want to know things. And that's about all you need to know about that. Anyway, those are all of the books that I hauled in the last couple of months, and literally every single one of those books I got for $5 or less. I just did it. I have a lot of gift cards, as I said, and then I went to those charity shops and I found them, and it was just good. And I'm really glad that I have them now. I have no idea when I'm going to read a lot of them, but I'll be interested to see what I think of them when I get around to them. But that's about all I've got, and I'm curious if you guys have read or are planning on reading any of the books that I talked about today. And definitely feel free to let me know down in the comments if you have thoughts or are planning on reading them, or feel free to come over on Twitter and talk to me there. You guys know the drill. As always, I have both of my social media links down below in the description. I have my Twitter, which is @ASeaOfTomes, which is the same as my handle here. And I also have a Goodreads, which you guys can go over and check out what I'm reading and see my progress and my general thoughts on things before I come and scream at you about them over here. And other than that, I'll catch you later in another video soon. Bye!